when the idea first got proposed to me about 3 years ago, a friend of mine at the time, not in fitness, not in health. If anything, he's the polar fucking opposite of healthy at the time. And he's like, hey man, check out this diet. Have you heard about it? Carnivore diet. I'm like, I hadn't heard of it, but I put the words together and I'm thinking like, okay, so it's like keto, right? And he's like, no, bro, just meat, nothing else. I'm like, yeah, so it's like keto. And he's like, no, dude, just meat, nothing else. And I was like, okay, I don't know if you know me, but I was literally just finishing my last season competing in natural bodybuilding. And this final competition was the World Natural Bodybuilding Federation, or the WNBF World Championships. That was in just a few months before we were having this conversation. And, you know, I fancied myself pretty seasoned in the sport. I had a lot of trophies in the cabinet. And for someone to be talking to me about nutrition and a diet that wasn't in the business or wasn't in the industry and certainly wasn't a healthy guy, I was like, dude, you need to curb that shit. Like, you know, I've got some ego here and some pride about it. But anyway, I was like, sure, I'll read up on it. And I did some research, read some books, watched some interviews, listened to some more podcasts and whatnot about it. And I was like, I was intrigued. So I said, okay, whatever. What do I have to lose? Let's try for 30 days. So before I started on it, a few months before, I started towing my way back into the animal-based world. I didn't just go straight from vegan to carnivore, but I was a vegan for over a year, like 14 months. And then for about 4 months, started to reintroduce animal foods into the diet. And then I started the carnivore diet 30 days strict and straight. So no caffeine, nothing but animals and animal-based products for that first 30 days. But still, like, the contrast of having been a vegan to now doing this was dramatic. And when people talk to me about like, yeah, like I understand, I've kind of done it myself, there's no kind of doing it. It's either completely or like you're not doing it. When someone's like, yeah, I kind of tried carnivore, but like I was drinking while I was doing it, then that's not carnivore. Yeah, I kind of tried carnivore, or I tried carnivore, but I was still drinking a lot of coffee. Like, that's like the junior varsity version, if even maybe the prep team version. You can't physiologically and biochemically reap the benefits unless you're doing it pretty much full on. So if there's 3 versions, let's say 3 rings, animal-based would be the biggest ring. What is animal-based? Animal-based means the majority of your calories, or the denominator of calories, are coming from animals and animal-based products. The numerator can still be other foods other than animals. So like whole food items, you know, fruits and vegetables. I say if you can pick it, pull it, and kill it, that's what you should kind of be constructing your animal-based fraction with. Well, people say, well, what about bread? Can you pick it or pull it? It's made of things you pick and pull, but it itself is not. Same for pastas, same for dark chocolate, anything and basically everything that comes in a wrapper, right? Think of it like that. So pick it, pull it, kill it. That's your numerator. Animal-based, I guess kill it would be the denominator, but the majority of your calories are coming from animals. That's the outermost ring. Carnivore is the second most inner ring, just animal products now, right? That still includes dairy. So you can have animals and animal byproducts. That's what dairy would be. So you've got cheeses, milks, yogurts, all that other stuff, kefir and whatnot. The slippery slope there now is sugar. So it's not so much the plants and the plant toxins you're looking out for, but it's actually sugar, mainly by the form of lactose in your dairy. But the tightest circle of them all would be lion. So lion is strictly ruminant animals only. So ruminant, the hooved ones, a la your bison, cattle, sheep, goat, and I guess venison would fall into that as well, and deer, salt and water, and that's it. That is the ultimate reset for the body, and that's why I'm now doing 100 days lion diet. Second attempt. My first attempt just ended yesterday morning, or last night rather, because I was 12 days in and I broke because I wasn't ready mentally maybe or something like that. I don't know, but I make these runs every now and again, whether it's either 30 days strict carnivore or 66 days strict carnivore or 66 days carnivore OMAD, 1 meal a day, because I'm trying to find new levels of consciousness within my mind, testing limits, pushing myself, just finding things, right, in order to foster creativity, remove stress, and kind of learn new boundaries within my own mind and headspace about myself. So, it's a lot of rambling, but how does one go from being a vegan to eating carnivore? And now coaching people about how they can improve their lives and unlock their own minds with a diet. Well, I couldn't do that as a vegan because you have so many things coming into the system by way of variables and ingredients. It takes so much, especially as a vegan athlete, as a vegan bodybuilder. You can't do it without processed foods. That's when I really started to have this like aha moment in comparison to carnivore, because with carnivore, and especially with Lion, you're able to get everything from a single source of sustenance. Whereas as a vegan bodybuilder, those macronutrients do not exist in the ratios that I would want them naturally. You have to take supplements, powders and pills. You can't get just raw food like many vegans that are raw vegans. Hats off to you, because they're not eating the processed foods that most vegans are, for sure. Unless you are a raw vegan, you're eating a ton of processed food. And if you're a vegan athlete, you're eating a fuck ton of processed food, because again, those macronutrients don't exist naturally in the ratios you'd want. And then at the same time, you know how much fucking spinach you'd have to eat to get all that protein, or how many beans, and then with the beans, how many extra carbs and other things, lectins and plant phytotoxins and anti-nutrients are coming with all those other things, as opposed to just your fistful of beef. You're gonna get all the protein, all the fat, the macros, the micros, the minerals, the enzymes, the amino acid profiles that do not exist in plants but only do in animals, essential and non-essential. That's the difference. And then the bioavailability of all that. You're not stressing your body nearly as much as all those ingredients, all those variables come into play that are telling your system, hey, you need to process all of us, and the system's going, holy shit, who are all these people? And then I started looking at bowel movements. I was having like 3 to 5 bowel movements a day as a vegan bodybuilder. And in my mind, I'm like, well, my metabolism's high, I'm in great shape, I'm an athlete, I shit a lot. Like broy, right? But no, what is that? That's literally waste. All those massive dumps that I'm taking, like that's literally waste. My body telling me we don't need any of that. We don't want any of that. So all that wasting takes time, energy, right? And it's stressful to the body, the insides. Yes, it's part of the natural process, but like if we don't have to do that, then how do we feel, right? What happens if we're not constantly digesting food, constantly having to decide what's waste and what's usable? And when it comes down to it, when I would look at the size of those bowel movements and see like all that was going out, that means like out of a whole plate of food or a whole shake or something like that, it's only like a golf ball's worth of nutrients that are getting absorbed and retained. Whereas with carnivore, and especially Lion, my bowel movement frequency is like greatly diminished, as well as the volume. So I've gone as long as 7 days without a bowel movement before, which is amazing. Why? Because again, the bioavailability or the usefulness of the sustenance that's coming into the body is 100% virtually, 100%, meaning all of it is able to be used, all of it is able to be broken down. Nothing is needing to be discarded because it's all hyper compatible, because it's what we are. It's the same tissue, it's the same, similar strand DNA profiles. If we have a gunshot wound in the arm, we're not gonna take a banana and try to put it on there to patch that arm up with, but like if we needed to use skin from a cow, it could hold, it could work. I mean, we use pig hearts now for human transplants. The compatibility of animal foods with our human bodies is pretty damn good. The incompatibility with plant foods in our human bodies is not. Are there benefits from plants and consuming plants and fruits? Yes, I'm not saying there are not. However, there are a lot of side effects that come with those that we don't hear about. Just like when you're watching a commercial about prescription medication, and side effects may include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, upset stomach, erectile dysfunction, depression, anxiety. That's a long list. But when you're trying to cure cancer, sometimes you're like, fuck it, I don't care. Well, what if just because a certain fruit has, antioxidants, but what if those antioxidants come with several other things that are not the best things for you, like inflammation or spikes in insulin or just depression even? Same thing with vegetables. Certain plants that we ingest naturally have a lot of defense chemicals in them, toxins that are not good for our body. So yes, there may be benefit, but there will also likely be a coupled adverse effect. You might not see it, you might not hear about it, but it's likely there. So I started to see these things, to compare and contrast from veganism to carnivore. And the more I did it, the more I saw, like, God, it was taking so much for me to do what I was doing. And again, this is especially as an athlete, right? It's one thing to be just a person, average Joe, average Jane, trying to keep homeostasis, feel good, live well. But I was pushing it. I was an athlete, right? Like testing the limits of human mechanical ability and whatnot and endurance. And it was taking so much, so many freaking ingredients to make me able to do those things that I was doing. Whereas now, like, I could literally just eat a steak. And not only am I able to do everything performance-wise, athletically, but my body doesn't have all these other systems having to fire off because of those variables coming in. So now my body can self-cleanse. It can heal from within because all these other quick reaction forces are not having to do all these extra jobs because of the lack of variables. And it's just this easy, seamless, constant processing that's hyper efficient, totally being absorbed and utilized with minimal discard and the least amount of stress on my body as possible. It's very similar to breast milk. Breast milk is a miracle of mammalian evolution, meaning it gives our infants everything they need from a single source of sustenance. One. Why? Because it's highly absorbed or highly absorbent, immediately utilized. It's an efficient method of transportation, obviously, from breast to mouth. Nothing is really wasted. All of those things are taken and utilized, and not much is discarded. That's why infant bowel movements are kind of neutral, to say the least. They don't smell maybe like roses, but they certainly don't smell the way they do once you start introducing the green and orange and colorful jars and other foods. But when they're on breast milk, it's almost like just a poof sometimes, a dust pile that makes you think like, oh man, my kids must be special because they shit and it doesn't stink. Well, wait until you, like I said, you introduce those orange and green jars and you'll think otherwise. But at the beginning, no, it's because all of that is from that single source. The body is using damn near all of it, and there's the least amount of duress on their bodies. Why? Because their bodies are fucking fragile. They can't be stressed because they're growing and developing. So how can we harness that same kind of idea as adults? It's through carnivore, especially with lion. When you cut it down to a single source of sustenance that's going to give your body the most bang for its buck, the most benefit, the most bioavailable ingredients, the most nutrient-dense item, single item, it's going to be red meat. If you were trying to find one item for the rest of your life to live on that you're going to thrive, not just do okay, but like literally thrive, it's not going to be an avocado. It's not going to be spinach. It's not going to be coconut. It's not going to be beans and rice. You can survive on those things, but again, it's about what else is going to take place inside and at what cost those things are going to come to give you what you're getting out of them, but what they're going to take as well. And then the quantity, again, my God, how much fucking spinach? It would take dump trucks worth, literally. Whereas one piece of steak can give you all that. Single source of sustenance with the least amount of stress on the body, maximum utilization, minimal discard. Nothing else does that. So those were my reasons as I started kind of having these epiphanies, really, because I didn't know it at first, you know, but then when I started to see the writing on the wall, that's when I started to go, oh shit, this is hard to argue with now. So it's not that I'm a fist-pounding dogmatist, evangelical about the carnivore diet, but I'm more of a scientist. I'm not trying to prove law, but I am trying to test theory and hypothesis constantly. Why? Because I'm trying to disprove them. I'm constantly trying to disprove the hypothesis, and that's why I keep testing it, and I keep failing because I can't disprove it. How do you test the hypothesis? Well, I go on these runs with carnivore of 30 days, 66 days, months, whatever, where I'm feeling amazing. Life is just happening and coming to me, happening for me in the way of like, I just feel like everything's a magnet almost with my work, with my friends, with my family. Nothing seems to be going wrong because my headspace is just like, whoa, humming. like you're on cloud nine 24/7, super being. You feel like a super being. But to me, it's actually just being a human being, because most of the rest of us are living in a deficit because of what we eat. Because the single most effective thing we can do in regards to our health is controlling what we put into our freaking mouths. And most people, especially in America, especially in the Western world, succumb to this slave diet of refined carbohydrates and processed foods. I mean, 60% of the majority of calories, 60% of the calories consumed by the majority of the country are refined and processed carbohydrates. And then you correlate all the sicknesses and diseases with consumption of XYZ foods, and you wonder why we are constantly sick. It's a perpetual cycle of eat these foods, take these meds, continue to feel this way, never heal. As opposed to eat what I'm eating, not to say that it has to be that, but like this is what I found. I eat this way, I don't feel that way, I feel incredible, I don't get sick, I don't need other things, my mind unlocks, my consciousness elevates and expands, inflammation goes away, depression goes away, anxiety goes away, strength increases, libido increases, sleep improves. I don't know. That's why I say I keep trying to test the hypothesis, because I'm human and I'm still like, hey, I just did 30 days carnivore, I'm feeling amazing, let me eat some goodies. Cereal, ice cream, cookies, fruit, that's usually my go-to stuff, right? Like, yeah, the pleasure foods. And then sure enough, the inflammation returns. Swelling in my feet or my hands comes back. Depression kicks in real fast. Scarcity mindset, fear-based mindset, victim mentality. Like literally my mind changes when I get the junk food into my body. Sure, there's a pleasure from the initial consumption, but then that immediately subsides with like, oh fuck, like I don't feel like I did before I ate this, and I felt a lot better then. How is that possible? That is why I keep testing this hypothesis, because I can't believe it. As much as it continues to prove me wrong, meaning it keeps proving to me that like it is apparently this way, still life everywhere else out there, like everybody's eating this, they're eating this way. I'm not judging anyone, I'm not a critic to anyone's way of life or their way of eating, but it's like, my God, I've fucking found something here, and yet I'm still human. I'm 38 years old. I ate that way for, that much of my life. It doesn't just change in a few years. I mean, this is my third year animal-based and carnivore, and still I'm going back trying to try these other things or eat these other things or thinking I want them or trying to resurrect old memories or keep in touch with my past, especially my childhood, like with pancakes and French toast, how my father used to make them for me. So a lot of that to me is an emotional connection with the food, which is the truth of it all, because again, many of us live to eat, not eat to live. But that's what keeps me curious. That's what keeps me coming back. That's what keeps the work going on. That's what keeps the struggle alive. And that's why I wanted to talk about it and share, because when people say things about, or they assume I'm a carnivore, or you're a carnivore, oh, you're almost a Nazi, you're a sadist, you vote this way. It's very quickly labeling. But literally, I'd say it's hard to find someone else like me that was a vegan athlete, a vegan professional athlete, and now I'm eating this way because of the reasons that I've just said. I'd say that puts me in some rare air, and like I wish that more people would just have perspective to both sides of that, as opposed to the kind of witch hunts that carnivores have towards vegans and that vegans definitely have towards carnivores. I would say it's more of the vegans towards the carnivores that are the cross burners, but that's just the nature of the beast. But still, if there was more of a attempt to understand each other's side as opposed to just crucifying one another, I don't know, we might figure some stuff out together, but that's a whole other can of worms. Anyway, the single most effective thing you can do as a human being in regards to your health is controlling what you put into your mouth. So remember that, think on that, digest it, and yeah,